A weird mist surrounds the town, bringing with it dangerous creatures from another realm that cage a group of people inside a grocery shop. Tensions increase as the group tries to escape and survive, and each person's inner demons are exposed. Will they withstand the threats the enigmatic mist poses? In the movie, let's find out. The main character, artist David Drayton, is introduced hand-painting a poster for an upcoming horror movie at the beginning of the narrative. Later on that evening, a severe storm hits Bridgeton, Maine, knocking out power to David's home and the entire town. David takes his family below to find refuge from the storm because he fears that it can result in mishaps. A tree crashes through his studio window shortly after they run for cover, damaging all of his paintings, including his most recent piece. After the storm, David and his family go outdoors to inspect their property in the morning. David holds up his most recent artwork and takes one final, regretful look at it before tossing it away. He and his wife Steph are then approached by Billy, who says he needs to show them something at that precise moment. The family then learns that a tree that had fallen during the storm from their neighbor's land had crushed their family boathouse. The family notices a thick mist approaching from off the nearby lake as they gaze at the now destroyed boathouse outside their home. David dismisses his various hypotheses about what the approaching mist might be and informs his family that it might simply be the result of the storm. After that, he tells Steph to dress Billy because he'll be going to the store to get some supplies to fix their broken window and some groceries. David visits Brent Norton, a lawyer who lives next door, to exchange insurance details regarding the boathouse as Billy gets dressed. As soon as David enters Brent's yard, he sees that the storm has also caused a tree to fall on Brent's car, which David also notices. Following their discussion of insurance, David agrees when Brent requests a ride to the town. David's wife, Steph, stays behind at the house as he, Billy, and Brent head into town in his SUV for the grocery shop. They notice a few trucks from an electric company traveling in the opposite direction while on their way to the grocery store, and strangely, a large number of military vehicles are traveling to the military base. David pulls out his phone to call Steph when he gets to the supermarket, but there is no coverage. Additionally, he attempts to call her on the payphone, but discovers that it is likewise useless. When David goes back to the grocery store, he discovers that everyone is there stocking up on goods. Sally, a store clerk, is there and he asks her why they aren't utilizing the generators to power the entire grocery store. She responds that they only use them to keep select things cool and prevent them from spoiling. After some time, when David is chatting with his son and some neighbors, he notices 3 military personnel who appear to be laid back walking inside the business. Then immediately after, a military policeman shows up. After informing the soldiers what to do and giving them instructions to return to base after 30 minutes of shopping, he simply walks away. Later, David hears a loud siren outside that frightens everyone inside the store, making all of them look toward the parking lot. They encounter Jeff, a local resident, outside. Miller, bleeding and pleading for assistance, is seen heading in the direction of the supermarket. The man screams about an unknown hidden object as soon as he enters the store, killing and attacking people in the mist. There are no creatures visible outside when people look, and discover that the supermarket has been completely engulfed by the mist. White smoke is all that is visible. Many customers rush out of the store in shock at what is happening. Regrettably, screams are heard shortly after leaving the area and heading in the direction that the people run. A sudden earthquake strikes as they are still concerned about the mist spreading outdoors, which makes some individuals panic and become even more stressed. Then a store manager tells everyone to close the door and stay calm inside. However, there is a woman who is concerned for her 2 small children who are left alone at home. In that case, she requests a ride home so she can check on them. Everyone is staring at her out of fear for the threats the mist might provide, but no one wants to go with her, so she leaves the grocery store alone. David, his kid, and a few locals who are also stuck with them in the grocery store take a seat to rest after some time has passed and they have all calmed down and thought about what is occurring. This time, a supervisor by the name of Ollie Weeks checks in on them and advises David to obtain some blankets from the storeroom. David then stands up and walks by himself into the grocery store's rear area. He realizes the generator is sputtering and nearly overheating while checking on the blankets. He hears something outside the big grocery store loading dock entrance and looks around the generator. As he draws nearer to the loading dock entrance, he is surprised to discover that it is a scary beast that begins pounding forcefully at the door, prompting him to flee back into the main store. He tells those he meets what he heard through the door, but they don't take him seriously. David also warns them that if the generator isn't fixed, it might only operate for a brief period of time. The 5 of them return to the loading dock to verify the sound and repair the generator after persuading other men to join them. After examining the generator, they determine that the outside exhaust system is blocked, and something needs to be removed from it. Young Norm, a bag boy, offers to go outside. David tells him not to go outside after hearing this, but Norm and the other men continue to insist on opening the massive loading dock garage door despite his cautions. The mist grows tremendously heavy as the door is opened and slowly seeps through the loading dock into the back room. The men then make fun of David for being a wimp, but before anybody can respond, a huge tentacle emerges and grabs Norm's leg in an attempt to pull him out from under the door. In an effort to avoid being completely pulled away, Norm grabs the door. The other men are too frightened to respond when David tries to pull him back while asking for assistance. Unfortunately, more tentacles arrive and start tearing flesh off of Norm's torso. Ollie cracks the emergency glass to get an axe out of it in an effort to save Norm. He makes an attempt to sever the tentacle holding Norm, but he misses and nearly hits his head. Unfortunately, the creature drags a bloodied and frightened Norm into the mist. David hastily takes the axe on the ground and manages to sever one of the tentacles before the remaining ones are able to escape. They seal the loading dock door after the terrifying occurrences, still unsure of what is truly lurking in the mist. Jim approaches David and tries to apologize for making fun of him as they are all in shock. David punches him and yells that he killed a teenager for not believing him because he was upset by what had happened. They return to the grocery store after the argument has ended and everyone has calmed down to tell Brent what they've found and to see if he has any suggestions for what to do. But when they say that monsters live in the mist, Brent snaps at them because he thinks they're making fun of him. There is a commotion caused by the argument, and even the store manager declares it to be absurd. David and the men insist on displaying the manager and a few other people the monster's severed tentacle. After seeing for himself, the manager now accepts their story and informs the other customers of the awful news. Brent, though, claims that it demonstrates nothing and that the mist is merely a result of the storm. Then he gathers a gathering of people outside the shop so they can leave and seek assistance. At this point, a religious woman named Ms. Carmody stands up and makes fun of both David's group, which is barricading the store, and Brent's group, which is leaving. The kids in the store start to get scared as Ms. Carmody keeps preaching that they should offer a human sacrifice to the monster in order to save everyone, which leads one woman to slap her. When Brent and his group are about to leave the store after some time, some people try to persuade them to stay but are unsuccessful. A man offers to get a shotgun out of another man's car when he hears that Brent's group is leaving. For the sake of the customers in the business, David asks the man to wrap a 300-foot rope around his waist. The first group to depart is Brent's. Immediately after them, the man with the rope departs. The rope pulls quickly out of the store after a brief moment of silence. It simply runs too fast despite David and several others' efforts to slow it down. The rope eventually stops, and David and the others pull the rope back. The bottom, dismembered half of the man's body is still fastened to the rope's end when the rope eventually returns into the shop red, covered in new, flowing blood. Everyone in the store cries and screams in response to seeing this. The survivors decide that the only way to survive is to keep blocking off the storefront because they believe Brent and his group have also perished. People in the store have been divided into two groups ever since Brent and his group left. One group adheres to David's philosophy that they must block the doorway in order to survive until help arrives. The second group, however, pays attention to Ms. Carmody, who holds that God has punished their town and the entire globe for their crimes by sending down his plagues and wrath. She yells out that she is a virtuous Christian and that anyone seeking salvation should pay attention to her words and the scripture. This issue, according to David and his men, can be resolved logically and is not a scriptural issue. But that evening, 2-foot-long, enormous insects start landing on the storefront windows, preventing both groups from having a chance to argue. Although the insects don't seem to be the issue, some enormous, 6-foot-tall predator birds that resemble pterodactyls and are pursuing the insects are now slamming into the windows. When a bird strikes an insect that is perched on a window, the windows begin to break even more. Eventually, a bird breaks a window, letting a number of insects pass through. Upon entering, the insects assault a young girl who is working at the grocery shop and kill her right away. 2 more large bird creatures enter the store as other people beat and kill the insects with shovels, rakes, and sticks. The first bird promptly murders a guy upon entering the shop before being set on fire and dying. Ollie uses a 6-shooter handgun to shoot the other bird. The fire that was used to kill the bird finally severely burns a man. He is burned so severely that he asks to be killed in order to put an end to his suffering, claiming the pain is intolerable. He should hold on a little bit longer, David and those beside the burn victim tell him. David and his team decide what to do and then head outside to a neighboring shopping center pharmacy to get burn medication, antibiotics, and painkillers. They run across the previous military policeman as they return to the grocery store. The MP's body is covered in big pulsing sores and has been strung up in a spider's web. He claims that everything is their responsibility and that the military is to blame for the catastrophe while coughing and stuttering. Then, when the lesions on his body opened, live spiders could be seen developing inside. When David and his group noticed this, they quickly left for the grocery store. They lose 2 people to the spiders during their retreat. When David and his companions return to the store, they inquire about the meaning of the military policeman's claim that the military is to blame from the soldier who accompanied them to the drugstore. The soldier claims that his 2 business companions can better explain it, but the gang subsequently learns that the 2 other troops hang themselves in the loading docks. The lone soldier claims that all he knows is that Project Arrowhead, which was developed by scientists, can be used to unlock doors to other dimensions and worlds. Additionally, he says that Project Arrowhead lost control, allowing various creatures to escape. When Ms. Carmody hears this, she says that the doorway is hell and that they are now suffering as a result of the soldier's errors. She demands that the last soldier be killed as atonement for his sins in bringing these monsters to this area. The soldier responds that he is only a menial soldier and that the scientists conducted all of the experiments. They have meddled with God's power, Ms. Carmody cries, and those responsible must pay the price. One of the men who has sided with her after hearing this stabs the soldier 3 times in the stomach. The soldier is thrown outside the grocery shop through the front entrance, much to David and his group's disgust. While still conscious and bleeding, he begs to be allowed back inside, but a huge creature grabs him and murders him. The monster departs, and Ms. Carmody remarks that although the monsters have been placated this evening, ultimately more sacrifices will need to be made. She starts talking authoritatively about a human sacrifice as her fervent and frequent biblical ramblings increase. David, I'm almost out of patience. He assembles a group of individuals to help him escape the store because he wants to test if he can navigate through the fog to a safe location. Ollie, David's son, and 6 other people concur that after storing food and supplies, they will depart in a few nights. However, Ms. Carmody discovers them the night before the departure and stops them, assembles everyone else in the shop to stop them from leaving so that they cannot. She responds to David's request to leave by saying that not only is he unable to leave, the Billy, David's son, must be the next to die as a sacrifice. Several men carrying blades come up to David and Ollie. They argue at first, but eventually start fighting. Ollie is the one who doesn't think twice and pulls his weapon to fire on Ms. Carmody during the battle, which is ultimately interrupted by a gunshot. After startling her supporters with a shot to the stomach, he kills her by shooting her in the forehead, shocking and scaring everyone in the room. Ollie then raises his arm for David and the group to flee as he points the gun at the men with knives, forcing them to withdraw. An irate woman who is a fervent supporter and is good friends with Mrs. Carmody yells at Ollie as they leave, accusing him of being a murderer. The group exits the supermarket with David, who they chase after in his SUV. 2 of them are killed by spiders on their way to the car, but one of them returns to the store and is welcomed inside. However, the enormous beast that previously killed the soldier kills Ollie before he can reach the SUV. The man who first issued the warning about the creatures in the mist, an older woman, David, his son, and a woman all make it into the SUV. Just as a huge spider is about to jump on the car's hood, David notices the gun Ollie dropped and takes it off the hood before driving away. Fortunately, they are not hurt. The enormous spider simply gives them a brief look before climbing across the car. The survivors inside the store watch as David starts the automobile and pulls up in front of it. They first stop at David's house throughout the journey, where he discovers his wife's lifeless body wrapped in a web. David whimpers and grudgingly realizes that there is nothing he can do to stop the death of his wife after comprehending what has already occurred. They leave and travel on the main roads, passing numerous wrecked cars, a school bus carrying children who are webbed, and a great deal of debris and roadside damage. As they travel, they also come across the biggest monster in the picture, a huge 6-legged monster with tentacles the size of several tall buildings. The SUV eventually runs out of fuel, but they are still unable to escape the fog and reach safety. David pulls the gun while Billy is dozing off and the others nod in agreement, hoping that a merciful killing will put an end to their agony. David decides to stay alive and let the monsters kill him because there are only 4 bullets, not enough to kill them all. There are 4 lightning strikes coming from the car, and there are 4 gunshots heard. David then gets out of the car and screams for the monsters to come get him. He killed his 8-year-old son, the 3 other survivors, and himself by shooting them all, and he is now waiting to die. Outside, there is a loud rumbling sound that suggests something is coming toward David. Even though David is wailing at the top of his lungs and pleading with the world to end, no monster emerges from the mist. Instead, an entire military battalion is trailing a U.S. military tank. Truckloads of survivors, soldiers armed with flamethrowers and guns, and tanks are all currently on the route. The woman who first walked out of the grocery shop alone is one of the survivors from that location. She has her 2 children with her and is completely unharmed. Only a few seconds after murdering his son and 3 innocent people, David realizes that he has killed them all. The movie ends when David collapses and starts to scream again, and 2 soldiers come over to help him without realizing what David just did.